just give me 30 seconds while I test this pre-roll to see if it works, okay? So this is just the intro bit that I usually have. And let me know if you've got any problems hearing me, by the way. Where are we? Pre-roll. Intro. Okay, here we go. Okay, did that work? Let me know. And if you're joining me for the first time, good to have you with me. And don't forget to say hello in the chat section. And if you're watching this from anywhere else except Twitch, go now to Jackie M, JACKIEM .live. That will take you to my Twitch page, and that's where there's a chat room, and you can talk to me as we go through what I'm cooking, and you can ask me questions and all that sort of stuff as well. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie M. I am a Malaysian-born, Sydney, Australia-based street food specialist. I used to own a Malaysian restaurant here in Sydney, Australia. Gave it up a few years ago to look after my Down syndrome toddler who's at childcare today, which was a nice, quiet broadcast, except for the I can hear somebody mowing their lawn outside, so hopefully that's not a problem. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch for my future broadcasts so that you get to interact with me and you get to be in for a chance to win giveaways and that sort of stuff as well, which I'll announce during the course of this week. Now, today I'm going to be making something called Hakka Yong Tofu. Yong Tofu literally means stuffed tofu, okay? Now, I know it says stuffed tofu, but a lot of times we use other types of we stuff other things with this fish paste that we're using, okay? So it's not just tofu, but I have bought some tofu, so I'll show you what it looks like. If you can see it over here. Okay, this one says, what does it say? Fresh regular tofu, and it sits in these kinds of packets that you can pick up at Asian grocery stores, but for this particular one is actually from my local greengrocer actually. So I've got a greengrocer here in an Australian shopping mall that sells some Asian stuff, and this is one of them, okay? This says, like I said, regular tofu, and you'll see other ones that say soft tofu or silken tofu and that sort of stuff. So they're all a matter of degrees in terms of how firm they are, but these generally would in fact be quite watery, okay? As opposed to what most Westerners know as tofu, which are quite firm, okay? We Asians tend to use more of these kinds of tofu that are soft and a little bit silky, right? And like I said, within the silky spectrum, you know, there's regular, there's soft, there's silky, and whatever sort of thing. So this is the regular. Now, I'm going to cut it open. I've got some oil here. First of all, I'm going to deep fry these, right? And I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. I'm just going to cut this open, and when you do, get some water kind of like just pour out of it. Okay, so this could be a little bit careful if you can see this. Okay, and you just want to drain this out. Okay, I'll just open up the flap. Basically, you just pierce it with a knife or a pair of scissors and then tear it open. And here in Australia, well, here in Sydney, these packs of tofu nowadays cost about $3.50 a pack, give or take. So here you go. They're all already cut up in squares, and you will have 12 squares to a pack this size, okay? And this is what they look like. Okay, so this is quite soft, but still it holds its shape quite well because it's only regular as opposed to soft, which will, you know, be quite fragile. Just gonna get some paper towel. What is that? Okay, yeah. That is so strange. Give me a second. Streaming live. Someone just tried to call me on Google Hangouts. And I never talk to anyone on Google Hangouts. But every now and then you get some random person trying, like, you know, it's like those Yeah, strange people. Okay, so I've got this oil here. This is heating up. Just hang on. Okay, so tofu, I'm just gonna slide it in, and it should. And I want to fry it till it's got a nice golden brown exterior. Okay. And like I said, bear with me, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I go along. But if you want to jump ahead, this is if you look on the top right of my screen, that's the picture on my top right of the end result of what this will look like, okay? Yeah, what is it? This is very annoying. Hang on. Every single broadcast, something happens. Okay, I'm gonna fry a couple more pieces here. I'll fry all of them actually, why not? You see how fragile it is just by lifting it up, like casually I've broken off part of it. I'm just gonna toss that in. You can of course actually eat this just as is, right? Usually this is either fried or steamed. But for this particular recipe, I just wanna, like I say, I wanna fry up the exterior so it's crispy, and I'm gonna stuff it with fish paste, okay? Now, Yong tofu is quite popular in most parts of Asia. In Malaysia, it's sold by the Chinese. And like I said, it literally means stuffed tofu, but we stuff things apart from tofu. Most notably, we stuff chilies. Okay, I've got some chilies. You see in that picture over there. So I've got some red chilies over here that I'm going to cut open and I'm going to stuff. And also we stuff eggplant. So I'm going to slice these up and then stuff them. And also, I've got some tofu skin over here. Just give me a second. Okay, so I've got some tofu skin here that I'm going to be stuffing as well. This is a little bit crispy. We'll see how it turns out. This is a pre-opened bag of beef skin, okay? Usually it's quite pliable before you open it and use it. But once you open it, once it's exposed to air, it starts to crisp up. It makes it a little bit hard to handle. There are different types of tofu skin, but this particular type is what I use because it's already pliable. Some types you have to soak it in water to soften it, and then once it's soaked, then it becomes slippery and hard to handle. So I prefer just to get this type here. Let me just show you the brand again. Okay, it doesn't really show you the brand. Let me make it. Okay, Plum Blossom. Okay, you can get these at Asian grocery store, and basically you get like these large sheets of tofu or bean curd skin, and you gently peel them apart, and then you cut them to size, and I'll show you what to do. You can do lots of different things with it. So this is deep frying, and I'm just gonna move this out of the way. Now, to make the stuffing, like I said, is fish paste, okay? Now, in Malaysia, we use different types of fish, but here in Australia, what I've been experimenting with, I've basically come to the conclusion that you don't have to spend too much on the type of fish you use for stuffing. When we first came to Australia, mackerel was very expensive. Mackerel was kind of like the go-to type of fish you use for stuffing because you want a kind of fish where the flesh is quite sticky, right? Because you want it to be able to hold together and be, once you basically blend it, you want it to have a sticky texture so that you can use it to spread on the vegetables and all that you're stuffing. Absent mackerel, we were using what was called a redfish fillets here in Australia. And back in my day, like this is like 30 plus years ago, our the kind of the red fish fillets we could get at Asian grocery stores cost like $6 a kilo, which, you know, was a lot more reasonable than the 25 bucks or so that we pay for mackerel, right, per kilo. So we've used that for a while, but over the years, for whatever reason, red fish fillets have jumped up in price so that now they cost nearly $30 a kilo, right? So my brother CS, whose recipe I did, if you want to check out my past Twitch broadcast, it retains for 2 weeks only, so make sure you hop over to my Twitch page. Like I said, the short URL is just jackiem.live, L-I-V-E, and that will take you to my Twitch page. Go to past broadcasts, and it only retains the last 2 weeks of broadcast. But if you go there now, there's a recipe for Cantonese beef noodles, and that's from my brother CS, right? My brother CS is actually quite a decent cook, and some would even say he's a better cook than me, but you know, he doesn't cook on a commercial basis. He cooks for his family, so he's really passionate about doing things correctly and doing things like without taking shortcuts. Whereas because I've cooked for, commercially for as long as I remember, I tend to kind of like cut corners. Okay, so he was buying red fish fillets, and he was messaging me a few weeks ago and saying like how red fish fillet prices were going through the roof. So I told him, look, use basa fillets, which is what I've been using. And basa fillets, I'll show you. This one here is actually from Woolworths, okay? Basa fillets in the freezer section. And this, as opposed to like $30 a kilo, this costs $6.50 a kilo, right? Now, I have done this broadcast, like how to make fish paste in the past. So there is going to be some overlap. But in my previous broadcast with making fish paste, I used a different brand of basa fillets. But I've found since that this one actually works better. So if you live in Australia, if you live in Sydney, have a look at this one. Why is it better? It's better because I find that once it's defrosted, the flesh is firmer. The previous one I was using had a lot of like moisture in it, so that once you blend it, it feels very watery. So so you have to adjust and that sort of stuff a little bit. Yeah. Yes, Jackiem Live, Jackiem Live, right? Now, so this one seems to be firmer to the point. Now, the recipe for making the fish paste, I'll go through it once we get to that section, right? But this is the end product because I've got some leftover from the other day. This is one of those things I eat pretty much week in, week out. And with fish paste, you can use it for lots of different things. So I usually have a pre-made stash of fish paste that I use to make fish balls, that I use to make stuffed veggies and that sort of stuff with. Okay, so I usually have a stash of fish paste in the fridge here. So this is what I've got some leftover of from the other day's batch. Now, okay, so you can see it. It's in a paste format. You can make it to make fish cakes. You can make it. You can add seasoning to it to make Thai fish cakes. You can add seasoning and coconut cream to make otak, which is a Malaysian fish cake. Or you can just kind of like pat it into like oblong pieces and deep fry them. And then once they're deep fried into cakes, you can then slice them. And they're going to turn up into these thin fish cake slices that you can put into your noodles or your udon soup and that sort of stuff. Okay, so fish paste is very, very versatile. So this broadcast, if for no other reason, if you don't care for stuffed veggies, at least watch it just to learn how to make fish paste. Okay, now you see this is just frying up. It's getting there. I want it a little bit browner, a little bit firmer. But yeah. Now, one thing I mentioned with the basa fish fillets to my brother was that to get it to a nice firm texture, because basa fillets in general do actually have more liquid in them, so you will end up with a softer paste, right? To give it some body, add some chicken mince to it, okay? So I've got some chicken mince left over again, okay? So this is just regular chicken mince I bought from Woolworths again. And you only want to use a little bit, right? So for this 1 kilo of fish, I'll probably use about half of the fish paste in this takeaway container. And in here, there's probably about 300 grams of fish paste in here, I guess. So I would only use about 150 grams of fish paste to the fillets, okay? Just enough to kind of like hold it together. You don't want to use so much of it that the paste ends up not tasting like fish, okay? I mean, if you don't care about that, that's fine. But ultimately, you want it to be this quintessentially a fish dish, okay? And also with the fish paste, you can also add some onion in it if you want. You can add some chopped fresh onion, and then when you make them into balls and deep fry them as like cocktail snacks, right? It will just have a nice aroma to it because of the onion, but I'm not going to put the onion in. And also, what makes this Hakka stuffed veggies, Yong Tofu, is the fact that usually the Hakkas use, instead of chicken, they actually use pork mince in it. Okay, I don't eat pork, so that's why I use chicken as well. But also, they usually put dried shrimp in it, right? I'm not going to do that either because for whatever reason, my family is actually Hakka. Hakka is a Chinese dialect group, right? We have our own unique, obviously, language and also dialects, and also we have our own unique cuisine as well. But the Hakka version of stuffed veggies is, the fish paste usually has minced pork and also minced dried shrimp in it. I'm replacing the pork with chicken, partly because of the Hakka nature and partly because, like I said, the basa fillets tend to be a little bit softer. And also, the other point of difference is that Hakka stuffed veggies, we Hakkas actually like to have a lot of braised dishes, okay? The Cantonese stuffed veggies, usually they'll have the stuffed veggies, they'll make them, and then they'll poach them, okay? And if you go to Malaysia, you will see usually these carts, food carts with lots of different types of stuffed veggies. They'll have like, stuffed tofu, stuffed eggplant, stuffed chilies, whatever, all kinds of different stuff, right? And then you pick and choose which ones you want, right? And you give it to the guy and he snips them up. He basically blanches them to kind of like heat them up, snips them up, and then he either puts it in the bowl of like clear broth, or he actually would serve it with a drizzle of hoisin-based sauce, which is a little bit sweet, okay, and quite, I guess, quite strong flavored, and some chili as well if you want. That's the Cantonese version. We Hakkas actually, with the stuffed veggies, we like to braise them. We braise it with oyster sauce and garlic. So I'm going to use some of the stuffed veggies we're making like that, okay? So I'm going to dish this out. You can see this. I hope it still holds its shape when I cut it up, because I want to let this cool down, and then I'm going to cut it in half, into triangular halves, right? And then I'm going to basically cut a cavity in the middle, and I'm going to stuff it with fish. I know it sounds involved, but it's not really. Well, it can be, but we'll see how it turns out. Different types of tofu behave differently. This one seems to me like it's a little bit soft, okay? Well, let's see. I have a feeling I need to fry it a little bit more. Maybe let's just put it back in there. We won't worry about this. We'll let this keep frying. And I'm going to cut up the fish and show you what I'll do with it, right? So, get some basa fillets. And like I say, if you've got any questions, just hit me up, guys. Anya, hello. How are you? Good to have you. Okay, so basa fillets. This pack here, it says it's from Vietnam, right? But I've used this a couple of times. It seems to be a good brand, okay? I'm not going to pay to say this. I will let you know. Whenever I tout any product that I've been paid to endorse, so I'll let you guys know. Speaking of which, I want to give a shout out to Lenovo Australia and New Zealand for supplying me with the laptop that I use for my live broadcast, okay? And also to Rode microphones for the microphone I use for my live broadcast. Okay, so here you go. Basa fillets in the pack. This is pseudo frozen, and that's what they will look like, just like frozen fillets like this, okay? And I'm going to cut it up into about 3-inch ribs before I process them. Otherwise, they're going to be just too stringy and tough to process in the food processor. Okay. I'm using this stinky little portable gas stove. And these gas stoves, by the way, guys, they're not all created equal. Sometimes I find they're more powerful than others. This one seems to be a little bit weak, I have to admit, okay? I used to have I used to have like, at least a dozen of these lying around for my business, but I usually bought them on the basis of like whether they're on sale sort of thing. So sometimes you pick out a good batch and other times you don't. But this is kind of like one of my last 2 remaining gas stoves. The other one's down in the garage, so I don't want to have to run down to grab it. But yeah, this one does seem a little bit weak, and that may be what's affecting how this is turning out. But we'll see anyway. So you can, yeah. I want to, like I said, I want to fry this till it's golden brown, right? And the longer you fry it, the more, I guess, the more porous it becomes because there's a lot of moisture in tofu. But we'll see how it turns out. Okay, so fish. Like I said, I'm just going to cut these into segments, okay? So let me put on a pair of gloves. And if you've got any questions, just hit me up, yeah? The divided states. And thanks for the hosting, the hashtag me crew. By the way, guys, if you're into gaming, go and watch go to hashtag me crew, right? And they do a gaming podcast with New Zealand Australian gaming, talking about the latest in the New Zealand and Australian gaming scene. And they run a weekly podcast, so go and check out their page and check out their schedule. So, okay. So like I said, with this particular recipe, it involves me making some fish paste. And so, subsequent to that, I'm going to use the fish paste to stuff all these different types of veggies with. And after that, I'm going to use some of the stuffed veggies. I'm going to deep fry all of them, and I'm going to use some of it to braise it, like in a braised recipe. Okay. It seems kind of involved. That's because it kind of is, because this is one of those things that you could spend half a day stuffing veggies. When my mom used to make this, she would do this, like she'd spend all day with this, and then she'll have like different types of veggies. And what she does, if you see that picture I've got over there in the top right, my top right corner, I don't know how it displays on yours, you will see that I've got eggplant and chilies both in the one bowl. Whereas when my mom does it, maybe, yeah, it's partly because we came from a big family. She would do like huge amounts of like chili, huge amounts of tofu, of eggplant and all that, and then she would actually cook them all separately, okay? So when we know we're having Hakka Yong tofu for dinner, we will have like several different platters of, like one would be eggplant, one would be tofu, and one would be whatever. There's even bitter gourd, if you like bitter gourd, which is a Chinese vegetable that tastes a little bit bitter. I've never really kind of acquired a taste for it, but that's a very popular stuffed vegetable for a lot of Asians, right? So I've got that. So that's 1 kilo of fish fillets. I'm probably only going to do some of this because some of it's still quite frozen up, right? No. I'm going to put it in a food processor. I'm using my thermocook here, right? But I'm using it as a food processor because the thermocook light has lots of different types of functions. So it functions as a food processor among other things as well. So I'm just doing half of it at the moment, right? I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. The previous type of fish, of brand of basa fillets I bought, I found that I didn't need to add water because, like I said, it was so, it already had a lot of water in it. Okay, so I'll put a bit of the chicken mince in there, and now I'm going to add some seasoning to it. Okay, so I've got some pepper, just some regular white pepper. I want to go to New Zealand for the trout fishing. My understanding is that they are wise fish. There you go. I didn't even know you can do trout fishing in New Zealand. I've never been to New Zealand. That's how lame I am. This is chicken powder, right? And I use this a lot in my cooking, but it's very, I mean, like there's a show called, what's it called? My Kitchen Rules here in Australia, and there was this big headline the other day about how this team actually used some MSG in one of their recipes. It's like shock horror. Chicken powder contains MSG, okay? That's kind of like not to beat around the bush, but of course, this is kind of like similar to using stock cubes, okay? But in a powder form, and we agents like to use it in our cooking. There are certain brands that don't contain MSG. This particular one does. Okay, it's up to you if you want to use it. You don't have to. Otherwise, if you're going to leave it out, you can just put a little bit of salt in this. Usually, most recipes would just say salt and pepper, and that's it, right? Just a little bit of white sugar. I'm just going to put about just half a teaspoon of white sugar in here. Okay. And I'm going to put some tapioca starch into this. And you can use corn starch as well, corn flour. I use tapioca flour to help bind it all together, right? And sometimes the Asians, restaurants usually they use potato starch because it's cheaper. But they all pretty much function the same way. So all these in there, I'm just gonna process this into a paste, okay? Just give me a second. Jackie, okay, I think that was a telemarketer. Well, okay, you see the tofu here. They're firmer now that they've been fried a little bit longer, so I think they'll hold their shape a bit better. Some of them anyway. I'm going to take some out and leave the others in to fry a little bit more. So they do take a little while to fry up. In all honesty, the other type of tofu you can use are what's called tofu puffs, okay? So if you want to... That's what I used to use for my restaurant because then I didn't have to deep fry. Because tofu puffs are actually already fried up tofu and they're very spongy and they're brown all over and you cut them in half and they look like a little, like a honeycomb kind of pattern inside, right? But my mom actually goes to the trouble of doing it this way because it gives you a nicer, silkier, more textured tofu. Right? So I thought I might just do it her way, just to show you guys. I'm just going to fry this a little bit longer. So these are some of them, you can see. I hope they cool down in time for the stuffing. Okay, so I've got all this, I'm going to blend this up now. So that's 10 seconds in the thermal cook. I think I might need to blend it a little bit more. So I've still got some frozen chunks in there. And it's quite sloppy actually, you can see it. I probably could have left the water out. The last time I did this, I used the fillets already defrosted, which meant they would have had less water in them. So the fact that these were like pretty much solid frozen meant that there's a lot more moisture retained in it, but it doesn't matter. So you can see there's like a pasty thing. Okay, so back in there for a little bit longer. And I might add a little bit more tapioca starch in it just to help absorb some of the moisture. So this is quite moussey actually. Ideally, you would have wanted, like, I would have wanted like a firmer texture, but it doesn't matter. We'll take it out. The great thing about this particular recipe, the fish paste doesn't have to be perfect, right? Whereas if you were using fish paste to make fish balls, they need to be quite like exacting in how they feel and all that. But in this particular instance, it won't be too bad. We'll be able to get away with it, okay? So, got the tofu out. And just let me move this away for a bit. I'm going to come back to it later on. Yeah, look, so I often take a weekend fish at the place called Pitt River Lodge, north of Vancouver. So fishing's kind of a big deal, catch and release. Oh, catch and release. Here you go. Cool. I've never successfully caught a single fish in my whole life, so I've never really gotten into the fishing thing. But I'd love to go to Canada and check out the scenery. I'm going to put this in the fridge, the chicken mince, before it goes off. Okay, so I'm going to take out the paste here so you can see what it looks like. Okay. Traditionally, we would use like back in Malaysia when we make fish paste, we would buy whole fish, we would bone it, right? And then with the skin on the fillet, we'll flip it over and then use a knife to scrape the flesh off. Well, use a spoon actually to scrape the flesh off the skin. And then you have to be careful and pick out the bones. So it's fairly labor intensive. And then back in the day, before you have food processors, you actually use a knife to chop it up, okay? So you use the back of a knife to kind of like pound it, sort of thing. But with the advent of food processors, this is much, much easier. But having said that, a lot of people still don't make their own because they have this perception that this particular dish is quite complicated to make. It's not, right? And it's better to make it yourself because if every now and then you would see someone attempt to kind of like do a production run of stuffed vegetables and sell them at the shop. So in Malaysia anyway, you go to the supermarket in Malaysia, we're quite exotic, right? You go to the cold food section, you might find packets of like stuffed vegetables. And I think I've seen that here in Australia as well. So you might get a packet with like a couple of chilies, a couple of tofu and that sort of stuff, and for however much, but you'll find that the stuffing that they use lacks, you know, flavor. It's got more additives and that sort of stuff in it. That's what I've found anyway so far. So it's better to make your own so you know exactly what goes into this, okay? So you see the paste. Now, like I said, ideally this would have been firmer, but it doesn't matter. And back in my day, right, I sound really old every time I say back in my day, but back in my day in Malaysia, my mom used to like get the fish paste and then she would pound it. Pound it till it's almost like a bouncy like lump of paste, okay? And the reason, the theory behind it is that you expel the air when you pound it. So you grab it, throw it, grab it, throw it, and then you expel the air. And by expelling the air, you make it less, you make the texture more firm and more kind of like bouncy when you eat it. Because the Chinese, the Asians are very big on like texture when they eat this sort of stuff. So when they bite into a fish ball, it's like how like you know, how bouncy it is. It's not like, you know, they don't like you bite into it and it just kind of like, you know, breaks apart like a meatball, okay? Can I go over what's in the fish paste? Yeah, the fish paste is a combination of basa fillets. These are just frozen basa fillets. And also a little bit of chicken mince, not much at all. And also to that, I added some seasoning, and that consisted of Usually, like I said, if I weren't using chicken powder, I'm a little bit of a chicken powder addict, right? So chicken powder is like just kind of like an overall seasoning thing, like you know, the way you use stock cubes and that sort of stuff, except in powder form. So chicken powder usually contains a little bit of MSG, a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar and that sort of stuff. So I use that, and I also added a pinch of sugar to that as well, and I added some white pepper. And to bind it all together, I stuck a bit of tapioca starch, right? And you can use cornstarch for that as well. But that's what goes into it. But if you weren't using the chicken powder, you would just use salt. And in the old day, my brother actually taught me how to make this. My brother, like I said, who knows how to cook, right? He actually uses salt. He doesn't put sugar in it. I put a pinch of sugar just to round out the flavor a little bit. He doesn't put sugar. He would put salt and MSG. Okay, so he'd actually buy actual MSG and put some MSG and some salt. So those are the kinds of combinations you can use. But essentially, you want seasoning that's dry. So don't put soy sauce in it and don't put oyster sauce in it because you end up with a sloppy mess. Okay, you want this to be quite firm as best you can. And I'll just show you what it looks like now. So this paste, from here on in, you can add other stuff to it, you know. If I were making, oh look, there's actually a chunk of fish in here still. I'm just gonna throw it back into process again later on. So this actually ideally would be quite smooth, right? I think I might need to process this a little bit longer because it's like these were really frozen fish, because I just bought it from the shops an hour before I started this broadcast. Usually I would buy them a couple of days ahead and let them defrost in the fridge. So I'm just going to throw it back in. And the other thing you got to be careful about as well is when you're processing this, don't process it. Basically, almost just like pulse it or do it for short bursts, okay? Don't stick it in the processor and let the blades spin at high speed for 2 minutes, because you're going to end up, the blades will start heating up and you're going to end up half cooking the fish, okay? And that will just ruin it for you. Okay, so back to this. The start. It's at the start of the dough. Hello. Okay, so got this. Like I said, this is a little bit softer than I would have liked because I added water to it, which I shouldn't have. Because I added water because, like I said, usually I use defrosted basa fillets, which already has like lost the the ice from the fillets when they were defrosted, right? But this time around, I used actual frozen fillets and then I added water to it as well. But like I said, for this particular recipe, it shouldn't matter too much. And from this point on, right, if you want to make other things with it, you can. You can add some chili, you can add some belacan shrimp paste, add some eggs, add some coconut cream, mix it up into a paste, add some onion, right? And then wrap it in banana leaf parcels, and that's what we call otak-otak. Okay, add some curry spices in it as well. Otak-otak is like a Malaysian grilled fish cake. So once it's wrapped in a banana leaf parcel, you grill it on over an open charcoal grill, or you can just pan fry it, or you can just cook it on a hot plate, right? And that's what I used to sell. That's one of the things I used to sell. Otak-otak. What you can also do is make Thai fish cakes with this. If this were a little bit firmer, especially, right? Or you can just, like, what you can do is just scoop dollops of this into hot oil and deep fry it, and that will give you like fried fish balls, okay? But you can, there are lots and lots of ways to use this particular product. And anytime you eat like a Japanese udon or Chinese whatever, and you find all these strange slices of like fish cakes in them, they're all made from this kind of recipe, okay? So this is like the base recipe for it. And you can make it and freeze it. You can add other things to it like dried shrimp, which is what my people do a lot, but for some reason my family never caught on to the whole dried shrimp thing. So every time we've had Hakka Yong tofu, we've always done it with just fish. Okay, but in my particular instance here, I added a bit of chicken just to help hold the two bits together. You can tell I'm kind of losing my voice because my damn kid's been sick for the last 4 weeks and I've finally succumbed, I think. Okay, so this is it here. And again, if you've got any questions, just hit me up, yeah? Something to the fish paste, added some chilies for sure. Yeah, that's right. So you can even add like snake beans. You cut up into like little nuggets of snake beans and mix them in, and then you deep fry it like into Thai fish cakes with the Thai chili paste, right? You can use those Thai red chili paste or something like that. Mix it in with this, add some crunchy snake beans or green beans or whatever sliced up, and that will give you Thai fish cake, and you deep fry those as well. Okay, so there are lots and lots of ways you can use this. Okay, so on to the veggies, right? Okay, so I've got the tofu over here, and I want to do some stuffed chilies as well. So these are some chilies, and the way we do it is with the chilies, we'll cut them open down the middle. Okay, here you go, and I'll just open it out and show you. And then what we do is we pull out the stem in the middle and throw it out. Okay, or if you want to try and grow some chilies, that's what my mom used to do. Okay. And then just kind of like give it a little bit of a tap, and that will give you a cut open chili, right? And people always ask me what type of chilies I use in Asian cooking. In China, a lot of Southeast Asian cooking, we just call these big chilies. Okay, you go to an Asian grocery store or an Asian greengrocer, they'll have generally two types of chili: small chilies, which are bird's eye chilies, and big chilies, which are these ones, okay? And within them, they'll have green big chilies, and they'll have like green small chilies as well. But that's about the extent of the variety of chilies. So you just basically buy it according to size, right? And as far as the heat level, they vary, okay? So generally, when I was a kid, I don't know how true it is, and maybe some truth to it, we get told that usually the skinnier the chili, the hotter it is. So I probably don't handle my heat as well as some members of my family. So I generally would go for the fatter, rounder chilies. Okay. Bird's eye. Yeah, bird's eye. That's right. So, and when you're making chili paste or sambal and that sort of stuff, a lot of the time they ask for a combination of like big chilies and small chilies. That's what my mom usually does, okay? Okay, so take that out and just tap it. And that's a green chili. So a lot of it is just kind of like, when my mom used to make this, it goes batch by batch how hot the chilies will be. You just don't know until you actually eat them and you realize, oh wow, this is very, very spicy. Okay, and of course taking the seeds out actually reduced the heat level. Okay, so when I made this, the last time I made this, I left some of the seeds in at the top over here. Boy, that was so spicy, or the stem in sort of thing. So now I'm going to try and clear it out as best I can, because what I was having to do was actually discard the top part of the chili. That's where a lot of the heat is retained, so it tends to get hotter the closer you get up to the top. That's it. And the other thing you want to do, right, with these chilies, okay, I'm being a little bit pedantic, you don't have to do it, but you see the stems are curved in, right? What I tend to do is just chop off where it curves so that I've got straight stems over here. And the reason for it is I used to deep fry this in my deep fryer basket, and the curvature would cause them to get caught in the wires in the deep fryer, and just kind of like tug at it, and then they'll break off when you try and remove them. Okay, so that's just a practical thing. Okay, so just get that out of the way. And what did I do with my eggplants? Okay, Now, in Malaysia, we used to use the skinny eggplant, but in Australia, the big fat ones are much more common and cheaper as well. And to me, the taste is exactly the same, right? So in Malaysia, if you look for Yong Tau Fu, you'll find the stuffed eggplant will be like long and skinny. Whereas here in Australia, like well, if you buy it from me, they're big and fat. So I'm just cutting this in half, right? Okay, and then the way I would cut it is basically about 1 centimeter in thickness. Cut it down nearly all the way, but not all the way, okay? And then another centimeter, cut it down all the way. So basically we're creating these, how would you call it? We're cutting these slices of eggplant with a slit in the middle, okay? So, like that. So there's a part of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Thanks for following. I can't see who it is. Crime USA. In USA, you have to get Thai red chilies. Bird's eye, yeah, packed in small package. Yeah, it's quite. I find bird's eye chili, like a little goes a long way with it. My mom uses it a lot when she makes chili paste, garlic chili. She'll use half a jug of bird's eye chilies and half a jug of these big chilies. Me, when I make it, I'll probably use like most of this type of chili and probably just a handful of bird's eye chili because I find they can be quite vicious. Not all the time, but yeah, a lot of the time. Bird's eye is not outside of any grocery available. Ah, is that right? Rather mild chili is available at our large grocery stores. Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I that's one big barrier with me talking about Asian ingredients because here in Australia, ingredient availability is quite different to what you get in the USA. So it's sometimes a struggle when I talk about this and that. I've done like these live broadcasts for years now, and then at the end of it, I'll have like someone in the USA going, I have no idea of any of the ingredients you just used. So it's a little bit disappointing when that happens. But I guess, that's why sometimes I tell people to do substitutions. And butterfly, that's it, yeah. And of course, once I talk about substitutions, the purists, the Malaysians will come on board and say, oh, that's not authentic, or she's not an authentic Malaysian cook. So it's hard to kind of like strike a balance. So I'm going to do another eggplant because I love eggplant. Okay. So butterfly, this is a good way to describe it. I never thought of it. Well, I was going to say sandwiches. If there's any particular recipe you want me to attempt next time, guys, let me know. And I will schedule that in. I've got some guests lined up, and I'm going to be doing a vegan series with one of my former guests on the show. And unfortunately, she hurt herself. She fell just a couple of days ago. So we may not be able to start this week, but it is on the cards, okay? So this is bean curd skin. You can buy these in packets in Asian grocery stores. I've used half of it, right? But usually they come in bigger sheets than this. But essentially, okay, this is still a big sheet. Okay, so you would get a pack of this. This is a little bit crunchier than how it was originally, okay? It's crunchy because I've opened up the pack and some of it's been exposed to some air. But these are bean curd sheets, and you buy them and you gently pull them apart, okay? There you go. And there's always this like flap here that I can never successfully pull apart, so I'm just going to leave it like that, right? So I've got, I think there's like about 8 sheets to a packet, and I've got 3 left out of that, which is just fine. And then with these, I'm going to cut them into squares. This is a little bit too crunchy really, but once you deep fry it, it won't matter so much. There are a couple of ways you can use this with the fish paste, okay? One way, I'm just going to snip off Actually, I'll leave it in. Because this is a little bit crunchy, but hopefully it will work. And I'll show you the difference. There's some leftover fish paste I made the other day. You see it, it's quite firm. And this is the one I just made here now. It's a lot softer, okay? But they'll both work, it doesn't matter. So with some of this, what I'm going to do, let me see, I'm just going to clear this up a little bit. With some of this, I'm just going to do it easy. You can just put like a spoonful of this here, and then just fold it up like this, and just pinch the edges. And basically you get these little pillows of tofu sheets, okay? And then afterwards you can actually deep fry it, or yeah, you will deep fry it. So a bit of that, just fold it in half. This is a little bit crunchier than I would have liked, because like I said, it's been exposed to air. But I think this one's a little bit softer, and I'll show you. The other way you can use it to wrap this, it's like a sushi roll, okay? So you can put some along here, okay? And then it's just tearing here a little bit. And then just fold it up into a roll. This isn't going to work because this is just way too crunchy. But it doesn't matter, once you fry it up, it'll hide a lot of sins. Okay. So you've got this, and then you can cut it into 3, say. And then you've got a little bit here that's open. You use a bit of the paste to just seal it up, okay? This isn't perfect, but you get the idea, guys. Okay, and this one's broken up. So you got these. Just put that aside. And in the US, there's like 15 different kinds of peppers. That's what I mean. In the US, every time people, I get a lot of questions because I've done a few videos relating to chili and chili paste. I always get people ask me what type of chilies, what type of peppers are these, and it's a very American question, because that's why I thought I should mention. If you're doing Asian cooking, it's just big chilies and small chilies. And in all honesty, right, in Australia, it's pretty hard to find jalapeno, habanero, and all that sort of stuff. You would find them in like gourmet delis and some like really fancy inner city places, but generally, most places would sell this, which is what we call big chili, and bird's eye chili, the small chili. But having said that, I have in fact used jalapeno to make sambal with, and it tastes just fine. It tastes great. It's probably jalapeno would be hotter in general than these big chilies. So you just got to balance out how much you use, because sambal essentially is a combination of onion and chili. So I would use less chili to onion ratio if I were using jalapeno or similar. Okay. So I've got this, and with these, right, I'm just going to stuff these with this, and usually you would use a knife, okay? So I've just got this opened up. You use a butter knife for this usually, but I'm just using a spoon. So you basically stick a spoonful of it in there and just smooth it across, okay? Now, back in the day, they used to dip this with a bit of salted water, or just drench it with a bit of flour just to hold it in place. I don't usually bother, and I find that it doesn't affect the final outcome, okay? So just that in there. So these are kind of like eggplant sandwiches. And so to this point, you would just call this Yong tofu, which is stuffed veggies, right? But the Hakka side of it is how we, what the final end product looks like. The final end product Hakka version is that it gets braised with some oyster sauce, and then you eat it with rice. Whereas the usual Yong tofu Cantonese version, you usually eat it with noodles or in its own bowl of soup. Or if you have it with noodles, you basically blanch rice noodles separately, fresh rice noodles that I use in some of my previous broadcasts, right? You blanch them, and then you deep fry these, and then you, well, I deep fry it, some people poach it, right? and then you drizzle a hoisin sauce over it, and some you sprinkle some toasted sesame seeds over it. Okay, so those are the two main points of difference. Now, when I do this, because I do this for personal consumption nowadays, I'm not that, fussy about how it looks, but usually you would just kind of like gently kind of like spread it through, okay, like that. So this is, when my mom used to make this, because like I said, we came from a big family. There were 8 kids, right? And we loved eating this. She would do like huge amounts of this. She would do this, and she would be all day, and we would be helping her like stuffing it and all that, because there are quite a few steps involved. So it's not a 5-minute stir fry dish. This is like, first you're going to make the fish paste, then you're going to prepare the vegetables, and now you're going to deep fry all this. Okay, and when you're doing it for a big family, you spend a couple of hours deep frying these, and it's still not ready, because then we make it Hakka style, which is we then braise it. Okay. And because she has so many different types of veggies and big amounts of each one, she would braise each one of them separately as well. Okay, and I'll show you all that, how that works out. Okay, so stuff like this. I'm still organizing giveaway, guys. I know you guys have been following me for a few episodes. I gave some bottles of wine away last week, but I'm still organizing the next set of giveaways. Is that eggplant? Yes. Oh, eggplant is beautiful. You need to eat it. Last time here, it's just a kitchen in a restaurant. Everton. No, it's not in a restaurant. I I used to have a restaurant, but this is actually my home studio. I gave up my restaurant a few years ago to look after my Down syndrome child. He's at childcare today. But nowadays, I still own a food business, but I cook outdoors, okay? But the rest of the time, I do a lot of online videos. Okay, so this is the tofu that we fried up earlier, right? I'm just going to cut this diagonally across, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, it's a little bit warm still. So there's 2 halves of a tofu that's been deep fried, and then what we do, I'm just going to get a spoon. Okay, so it's a little bit flat for whatever reason, but what we used to do is basically cut a slit down here, okay, and if there's too much tofu in there, we'd actually cut out a little bit of tofu, so we'll kind of like scoop out a bit of tofu just to make enough of a cavity for the fish to go into, okay. I'm just using a smaller spoon in here, okay, so you see here, so we're stuffing it like this. And like I say, if you're really hardcore, you would drench the tofu, because the tofu is actually quite wet. There is some danger that the filling might actually slip out when it's cooking. But I'm doing this for my personal consumption, so it's like if it slips out, it's still in the same bowl. I don't really care, okay? But if you're really hardcore about this, you might want to drench a bit of tapioca starch or cornstarch on this, right? And then before you scoop this in. I just try and avoid using too much flour in my cooking for whatever reason. I just don't like the idea of like too much starchiness in my food. So best I can avoid over flouring my work area. Okay. So stuff this in here. And the other thing I've got to mention, I mentioned about how you don't process the fish for too long in the food processor or at too high a speed, right? The reason being that the blades in the food processor might end up half cooking the fish, okay? Now, you notice how I add a little bit of water to the fish originally. That's assuming you were using defrosted fish. You would want to add a little bit of water to the mixture. Now, one way you can kind of like prevent the blades from overheating is, instead of adding water, you can add ice cubes, okay? Or you can add water that's cold water, basically, just to make sure everything doesn't get overheated, okay? So that's the tofu. Just stuff it in. Okay, if you can see this. This tofu is a little bit flat. Every batch of tofu that I use turns out has different characteristics, okay? So once it's stuffed it, like this. Next time you go to Asia, guys, keep an eye out for these stalls, all right? You'll look at it and you say, hey, I remember watching a video on how this is done, okay? It's something that's not very, I think, tourists, when they go to Malaysia, they look for the saute and all the usual kind of like popularized Asian street foods. But this kind of stuff is also a street food in Malaysia. But it's really the locals who go for it because, like I said, this is one of those things that even locals think, oh, this is just way too much hard work. It's cheaper just to buy, easier just to buy, okay? But sometimes if you live in America or Canada, as the case may be, or even Australia, you really, if you want to eat it, you really have to make it yourself, okay? So that's that. I'm just going to bring back the wok, right? Because we're going to deep fry these. Out of the way. That's what I did wrong before. Eggplant is similar to tofu in that it absorbs the flavors for this. Yeah, but eggplant has quite a distinct flavor in itself. I really find that it's, yeah, I really like the flavor of eggplant, but it does act like a sponge and absorb a lot of, you know, it actually absorbs a lot of the oil that we're going to use in the deep frying. So let's just heat up the oil again. Again, that's what I did wrong. I blended it too fast and it didn't come out well. Oh yeah, I missed. What's the stuffing? The stuffing is actually a fish paste. Okay, so I had some fish. These are just chunks of fish fillets, right? I bought them. These are basa fillets. They really ideally should be defrosted before you blend them. But basically, it's fish paste that are through in a food processor with a little bit of chicken mince. You can usually leave out the chicken mince. I tend to find the chicken mince helps to hold it together a little bit better. Bit of cornstarch or tapioca starch just to hold everything together. And then some seasoning consisting of like pepper. And you can put a bit of salt. I didn't use salt because I used chicken powder, which is essentially like, you know, chicken stock cubes, right, like crumbled, and I added a pinch of sugar as well. Okay, so that's the base fish paste, and this is what it usually would look like. This is my previous batch of it, which I probably should use up because it doesn't keep for very much longer than like about 3 days in your fridge. Then it starts losing its starchiness and all that, right? But yeah, generally when you're making this sort of like the main thing with the fish is it's not a hard recipe, but the main thing is to watch how long you process it in the food processor. I'm going to throw out the rest of these because they've just gone way too crispy for it to be any use. But if you were actually cooking, like a tofu hot pot or something, you could actually throw these in. But I don't generally use that anyway, sort of thing. But I do find it quite frustrating. Like once you open these packs of bean curds, they go really hard and crispy. So that's going out. I'll be back in a second. So basically, I've only made half a kilo of fish paste, and of that, I've only used about half of that. So I basically use about 250 grams of fish paste all up, which, you know, a kilo is $6.50 with a bit of chicken, so $7.50 worth of fish. So I've used like about $2 worth, $2 worth of fish paste in this recipe. Okay, so you just need some veggies, and you want to deep fry this. So the oil's not hot enough, you can tell, but it should actually start frothing up. I'm going to take it back out for a bit. And you're going to find that the eggplant does absorb a lot of oil, so you do want to actually, when you take them out, you want to drain them in a colander and let the oil just drip down underneath it, okay? Yeah, so the fish paste is like a base recipe. You can use it for lots of different types of Asian cooking, right? So in this particular instance, and what I usually do, guys, is like while the oil is heating up or while I'm frying the first batch, I continue to stuff the rest of the vegetables as well. So that just kind of helps economize my time a little bit. And I'll show you actually, I could do it here, I guess. But you can just make deep fried fish balls in this as well, right? So lots and lots of different ways to use this. I just need another tray. Let's get this out of the way. So you want a separate bowl for the end product to go into, and I usually use a sieve here, okay? So the oil drips down. And I'm using, like I said, a combination of fish and a little bit of chicken mince, but you know, to be honest, a lot of Asians actually, instead of chicken mince, they use pork mince, especially the Hakkas. The Hakkas love their pork. I'm like probably one of 2 Hakkas in the world who doesn't eat pork, actually. Okay, so eggplant, just a spoonful of filling in here. Is anyone watching the Oscars, by the way? I never watch this sort of stuff. Okay, so I like quite a lot of filling, so I stuff quite a lot. But you can smooth it out a bit, make it pretty. And like I said, you know, traditionally some people might actually stick a bit of salted water in. I don't know why they put salted water, but or they'll drench it with a bit of flour just to make sure that everything holds in place. You should fry them up, add a touch of salt, perhaps a little lime juice, make a nachos, some cheese. That's so American. That's the one thing about Australia. We're too far away from Mexico to have been influenced by any of its cuisine. So you really would struggle to find tacos, burritos, even nachos here in Australia. And that's why a lot of American expats complain about Australia, that you can't find good Mexican food over here. It's just never taken off, you know. First of all, it's too far away. And second of all, we've just got so many competing cuisines here in Australia. You know, we've got Korean, Thai, Malaysian, Chinese, cuisine from Hong Kong, because we're so close to Asia, Japanese, you know, that I think it's hard for cuisines from farther afield to take a foothold. Okay, so that's a little bit, it's nearly there. Okay. We've even got Filipino food. And yeah, but you know, European and anything like, you know, that side of the world. I mean, you have the occasional French restaurant, but that's about it. It's not the thing really here. Of course, you can actually watch the replay. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, guys, if you're watching this from anywhere else, go and join me at Twitch. The short URL is just JackieM.live, okay? www.JackieM.live will take you to my Twitch page, and please follow me there. And then, you know, that's where you qualify for giveaways, and also you get to interact with me live in the chat, okay? If you're watching this anywhere else at all, if you comment on Facebook, you comment on YouTube or wherever else, I don't see your comment until after the broadcast, okay? So just throwing this in. I'm not going to put too much in, even though there's room for a couple more, because the I mentioned about this stove being a little bit on the weak side, okay? So there we go. And this fish paste, like I said, you can just freeze it and you use it for other recipes and that sort of stuff. You know, sometimes I use it to make fish balls, and still a frozen part. Doesn't matter, I'll just stuff it in. Sometimes I use it to make fish balls, and also you can fry the fish balls, which is how I prefer it actually. You can fry the fish balls, or you can steam the fish balls, okay? They're not going to look quite as pretty smooth as the frozen fish balls that you buy that are factory manufactured, right? Because this is like more of a pure product. Factory manufactured products have a lot of stabilizers in them, you know, and that make them look pretty and smooth and white. Okay, these ones will look a little bit dimply, but you know, it would be a pure product for what it's worth. What we have, well, cuisines are so cool. What we have or don't have, I wonder what makes those decisions that the consumer. I think so, and also a lot of it's to do with migration patterns. You know, here in Australia, it's quite funny because Australia has some of the strictest laws regarding what you can bring into the country. So when we came to Australia, we found out like it was like 30 plus years ago. When we came to Australia, we found out we were missing this, like all these different herbs and spices, and then you can't just go home to Malaysia for holiday and bring them back, right? Because they get confiscated at the border here in Australia. Because Australia has what they call a very very unique and fragile flora and fauna, like because our wildlife is quite unique to the rest of the world, and a lot of it's been destroyed through migration. Apparently they blame the white man for the destruction of a lot of our native plants and animals. So nowadays, basically, you can't bring a lot of stuff into the country. But somehow, I reckon at some point, right, because we had a big influx of Indo-Chinese refugees in the early 80s, up to the early 80s. And subsequent to that, you start seeing all these beautiful fresh herbs and spices in the country. And I bet that's because, in the early days, some people sneak some of these into the country, all these seedlings into the country. So nowadays, we can get quite a lot of stuff here. We can get like Vietnamese mince, which is what we call in Malaysia laksa leaves, because we use them for laksa. And a lot of like Thai basil and all that, which you couldn't get when I first came to Australia. Okay. If you look hard enough here in Australia, you can even buy fresh coconut, fresh grated coconut. There's a store here about half an hour from me at this market on weekend. There's this Indian guy who apparently sets up a store, and he has these big, fresh brown coconuts, right? And he'll cut them up and he'll grate them for you, and you buy the freshly grated coconut that you use to extract fresh coconut milk out of, sort of thing. And back in my day in Australia, well, a little bit before my day in Australia, you couldn't even get coconut milk in any form here in Australia. So that in the early days when they made curry here in Australia, they were using fresh milk instead of coconut milk as the base. So just stuffing this here. First Nation man, everyone here is an immigrant out of Canada. First Nation man. There you go. I like the food, okay. I appreciate immigration from the perspective of culinary contributions, I think. There you go. So generally the eggplant takes the longest to fry up, and I wanted to actually just kind of like fry it to the point where it's slightly brown, okay. And in the meantime, I'll just continue stuffing the rest of the veggies here. It'd be interesting to see if these are, like I said, this tofu, because I only just fried it up and I'm stuffing it up now, it's still quite wet and slippery. Be interesting to see if the fish paste actually holds its place, or if I should have actually just drenched it with some flour like most people do. So just cut it open it up like this. Just scoop it in. And what my mom does when she fries these is she will only fry them not all the way through. I fry it all the way through, okay? So what she would do is she'll fry these up and take them out, like, because she's going to braise them again, right? She doesn't need for the fish to be completely cooked through. But she'll basically dish this out, like, in a minute or two, and they'll be sitting and they'll be like crying out for us to eat them even before she braises them. So sometimes we'll sneak one or two pieces and we'll find that the fish hasn't been cooked all the way through. Whereas I cook it all the way through because I don't just use it Hakka style, I use it for other things as well, right? I use it the other way, like I mentioned, like, with some boiled rice noodles and then drizzled with hoisin sauce and sprinkled with sesame seeds and all that, toasted sesame seeds. So that's Cantonese style Yong tofu. So Cantonese, Hakka, these are all different dialect groups, different Chinese dialect groups, yeah? How do you know when it's cooked? In theory, it's cooked when it floats up and stays floating up, right? But because these are quite thick, I'm just wanting to fry it up a little bit more. And also, I like, with eggplant is a bit of a funny vegetable. I find that, like, unless it's a little bit brown, sometimes it just tastes quite bland. So I like to brown it up a little bit. But if I were just fry, I'll show you actually. Let me just get some more fish paste. I'm going to show you. I'm going to do some fish balls. Okay, so I've got some paste here that, you know, usually you use your thumb to kind of like form it into shape. But you can just use your spoon. Okay, but usually in Chinese, just kind of like squeeze it through between the thumb and the index finger into a round ball before dropping it into water. You can, like I said, you can boil the fish ball or you can just fry it up. But when it starts to float up, you can take it out, it's done. But I like to brown it somewhat. Okay, so that's just a fish ball. And then you can just freeze the fish balls, you know. So usually the Chinese, the way they make fish balls is they'll get like a handful of fish meat, you know, work it around their hands, and then just squeeze it through like this between their thumb and index finger. And usually I'll do it like quite efficiently, and then they'll just like, it'll be nice and pretty and round, and drop it into water to boil. But I do prefer deep fried fish balls. Okay. So, tongs. So if my mom were cooking this, she would take these out now, right? Because like I said, she still wants to braise it, okay? And that will add the color to it. They are actually cooked all the way through already. But you know, I like I said, because I usually use it for other dishes as well. I want it cooked all. I want it like all nicely browned and flavorsome. And you notice the fish balls that I threw in earlier, they're still submerged, right? But once they float up and stay floating up, you know they're done, okay? I stuck a lot of filling. They will actually shrink back a little bit, like the cornstarch or tapioca starch makes them kind of like expand. I'm just going to take it out now. I can bet your bottom dollar no one's ever done this live on air before. Usually when people do, videos for that matter, really. Usually when people do live videos, they do things that, you know, people already know. I do all this really, I guess, slightly different things because I'm so sick of cooking the same, like, you know, top 10, like, Asian dishes stuff. Carryover cooking will continue to cook up. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So when it floats in this case, I guess it goes, cool fish balls, my kids love them. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be very popular with your kids, right? You fry these up and keep them frozen on the fridge. They'll keep for a good week once they're cooked up, right? Or like I said, you can freeze them and then just bring them out, you know, and use them for your noodles or whatever sort of thing. Yeah, and that's true too. What Oranya said as well, that they will continue to cook after you take them out of the oil. Okay, this oil is like I said, this heat is a little bit muted, but generally when you take out like a big batch of food from the deep fryer, you want to let the heat, like the oil, to come back to temperature before you add other stuff to it. Okay, but let's throw in the tofu. You see, it's the oil isn't quite hot enough, but I'm impatient, so I'm going to throw it in. And by the way, when you stick the paste on, just kind of like make sure you kind of basically push it down around the edges just to help seal them. Otherwise, there is a danger. Every time we make these, you will find that there's going to be a couple of pieces where the fish paste actually comes detached. Okay, so these are kind of like the casualties of making this dish. You have to expect a little bit of some loss from that. Okay. So you see the fish balls are starting to float up, but just make sure you turn them around to make sure that they're cooked through evenly. So just, again, just stuffing it in like this. It looks really rough because I'm just rushing through this a little bit because it's for personal consumption. But if I were doing it for my restaurant, I would like smooth it down properly so it looks pretty. But having said that, once you drizzle the sauce over it, it hides a lot of sins, okay? But usually if you buy this from the store, they'll all be prettily like smoothed over. Okay. So these fish balls are technically done, right? But I want them to be more brown. So I'll fry them for a little bit longer. Tiny spoon. Tighten this out of the pan. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated by this stove. I always tell people, look, you can do any stir fry with like just dinky little like portable stoves, but for whatever reason, this one here, this particular mate seems to be quite weak. But generally, I think they're a little bit more powerful than this. Every time I use this, I think, oh, it's running out of gas, and then you check the canister, and it's actually still on, or it's still quite full. So either it's blocked or it's just a poor design. So you can see here with this one, there's a bit of oil, quite a lot of oil collected from there, okay? But if I were frying this, I would usually fry the eggplant a little bit browner, okay? But it's a personal preference thing. Baby hands. Which part of America are you guys from, by the way? A lot of Australians are a little bit paranoid about traveling to America nowadays. Last time I went to America was actually October 2015, so not too long ago, just over a year ago. And LAX is like the worst airport for me. I swore never ever to have to fly into LAX again. I was going to Las Vegas for a conference, for a convention, and I had to go to LAX. And you meet these TSA agents on power trips. They're so annoying. So yeah, right there and then I thought, that's it. If ever I fly into America, I'll make sure whatever plane I take does not route me through LAX ever again. I nearly missed my flight because of a power trip by a TSA agent. There you go. So you can take these out. These are the fish balls. You can see it. Okay. Right. And with the fish balls, right, if you want to make like prawn balls, you can actually mix some prawn meat in it as well. You can mix some, you can mix some. I've tried calamari, but I found that processing the calamari was really hard, actually, because it's quite tough and fibrous. I actually tried to process the calamari in a meat mincer in my Sunbeam dough mixer attachment, and I found that it was really, really tough to process. Maybe in the food processor will be better, I don't know. So I was trying to, or calamari or squid, basically. So these fish balls, once you take them out, they will start to shrink a little bit and they'll start to crinkle up, okay? But that's fine, that's how they're meant to look. You'll see it, okay? Michigan, okay. Ohio. LAX is terrible. Thank you, not just me then. Huh. I've never been to Michigan and I've never been to Ohio. I've been to a few other places. I've been to Nebraska. I've been to California, obviously. Nevada, New York, Massachusetts. Drove through New Hampshire, I think. And where's Martha's Vineyard? Yeah, around that part of And I've been to Washington, D.C. and to Philadelphia, but never been to Michigan or Ohio. So if there's any compelling reason for me to visit those parts of the USA, let me know. Michigan hasn't had a very good rap in the last few years. Well, Detroit anyway. Okay, so these are floating up, so they should be done. Okay, that's the tofu. Just going to wipe this and use this. Okay. And I've been to New Jersey. And let's do the chili now, yeah. So let's bring that up to temperature again. So we'll let it heat up for another minute or so. And I'll keep stuffing the veggies. And I'll also show you making fish cakes, like those Chinese fish cakes, right? So usually when my mom does this, she'll have a bit of fish paste left at the end of her thing, and then what she'll do is she'll form these, right, into like oblong shapes, right? Generally like that, but you know, they can be larger, they can be flatter or whatever. And then she'll slide them in and fry them up. And then at the end, I'll show you what it looks like. I've not been to Nebraska, what a great sounding name. Great weather in spring and summer. In Michigan? All right, okay. You're not anywhere near Detroit, are you? There was an Australian guy, I think it was Detroit, that he went over because Australian property prices, like house prices, are ridiculously expensive compared to America. So you get some Australians actually make a living out of buying properties in the USA. And I remember reading not too long ago, this in the last year or so, this Australian guy who basically bought a whole ton of property, I think in Detroit, right, to rent out, right? And he was like going around collecting rent or something, and he got murdered. So these are the kinds of news that filter back to our media over here. And the two bucket list. Okay, 2.5 hours from Detroit. Okay, I hear some parts of Michigan's really pretty, but I'll have to check it out one day. Nebraska, I went in winter and it was bitingly cold, but some of the friendliest people there, right? Quite interesting. That will be enough of the fish cakes. I'm going to stuff more tofu, I think. Stuff chili. And this, I'm going to throw the chilies in now. You see the oil still struggling. Okay, so this is like my bean curd slices. I'm just throwing everything in now, if I can. To make more eggplant, because I like the eggplant. Those So Detroit's bad areas is downtown. Just drive 10 miles out, you have multi-million-dollar homes. Is that right? Oh, very cool. That's good to know. Yeah, you don't hear about all these here. You just hear the, you know, the worst case scenarios, I think. I really like Boston because I like lobster, and they had like cheap lobster over there. I'm not a huge fan of Nevada, well, of Las Vegas anyway. I remember the first time we planned to go to Las Vegas. There's this kid, right, from church, teenage boy from church, church-going family was telling me, oh, you will love it there. It's so family-friendly nowadays, right? And at the time, my daughter was about, I guess, about 8 years old or something like that. So you think, oh yeah, well, you know, they clean up their act in Las Vegas nowadays. And then you go over there, no, it's just sleazy, you know, everywhere you go. You get people handing out flyers for like strip clubs and, you know, and all that sort of stuff. It's just, it really isn't a kid's place. So I was really, really let down by that. And the next time I went, right, which was like I said, just over a year ago, to that convention, I found that like the previous time we went, at least for what it was worth, I thought the prices there were very cheap, like the hotel prices, like you get like really nice accommodation. I was staying at the MGM, I think at the time, and the food was really nice and cheap as well because they had like all these celebrity chefs open up eateries in the casinos, right? And the buffets were nice and cheap. And this time around, I don't know if it's because the Australian dollar had gone down by a lot. Everything felt really, really expensive. And also, we Australians are not used to tipping the way you Americans are, right? So, yeah. I mean, I tip, but my fellow traveler, this Filipino woman, I have to point out because someone here is Filipino. Yeah, this Filipino woman who was traveling to the same convention, she absolutely refused to tip anywhere at all. It was quite funny. I was like, oh no, this is really awkward, you know. But I tipped, right? But like I said, in Australia, we don't tip the way you Americans tip. We tip the way we tip. Say we go out to a restaurant and the bill's like, say, $47. I would round it up to 50. Okay, we don't try and work out like a. And I'm actually on the generous end of the spectrum. A lot of Australians don't even tip at all. Okay, because in Australia our wages are pretty kind of like astronomical as it is. So we're not kind of like tuned into the whole tipping culture itself. Let me just change this out. In the Philippines, is tipping included in the bill? We don't tip at all, actually. Also Detroit, yeah. Look, in Australia, tipping is optional. We don't. No one's gonna begrudge you if you don't tip. Because in Australia, look, I as a business owner, I know, right? Like I've got an event coming up this Sunday, and the amount of money I have to pay my staff because it's a Sunday and they have like special rates for Sunday. The bill for the event is like say X amount. And out of that X amount, 40% of it is going to staffing for the day of the event itself, right? Can you imagine how crazy it is? Say, you know, because wages here are so astronomically high. A lot of the time when I do big events like this, I end up getting paid less than my staff, you know, because in Australia, like, you know, you get like time and a half or double time on Sundays, right? So already your wages are crazy high. Okay. Already, like I had like put it this, I had like an 18-year-old kid start work for me last week, right? Never worked in the industry before, just fresh out of high school. you know what I had to pay him? $20 an hour, right? And then he's helping me out this Sunday, and I have to pay him $30 an hour. So that's why we don't tip. It's just like, you know, they already get plenty of money. But like, you know, and then you go to America and you think, oh wow, everything is so expensive because the Australian dollar is lower than you guys, right? So, you know, you think, oh, that's already like, you know, $50 for a meal. You know, we'll just give them like, you know, whatever, $5 or something like that. And I know Americans aren't too happy about it. The wage is decent, front of house. Oh yeah, everything is decent. It's crazy. It's like I shouldn't be talking about wages here because everyone's gonna like wanna like go, oh, you know. I'm shortchanging, but it's just the nature of the economy in Australia. But I've done work where my staff get so much money and I work out what's left for me as the business owner, as the front for the business and all that. I end up getting $3 an hour. But of course, you know, I can't complain to anyone. But I do pay my staff proper wages. There is a lot of like in the industry here in Australia where people kind of like pay under the table, right? Because you get like people come to Australia on visas that technically do not allow them to work or whatever. So businesses exploit those, right? So you see how some of these actually pop up. They will shrink back in once they cool down a bit. But yeah, some businesses, especially Asian restaurant businesses, exploit these people, right? So they'll pay them like $8 an hour or $10 an hour. I don't do that. I've always paid my staff like proper wages, okay? So that's why I'm so poor. Okay, that's why I don't drive a Ferrari. Even when I was a restaurateur, I drove a $2,000 all beat up van. But yeah, but the wages are ridiculous over here. So these are, like I said, these have puffed up from the frying, but they will shrink back down, okay? I've just got one more batch to fry up, and then I'll show you how we do the braising, okay? And that won't take long at all. So yeah, everyone, come to Australia. Oh, the $6.95 up front seems slow. Yeah, it is slow. That's what many are looking for in the USA, higher minimum wages. Yeah, you rely on tips. Yeah, that's the, you know, it's a tough balance to work out, right? But yeah, in Australia, in terms of tipping, like I went out for a meal with my daughter yesterday, and she was paying for it because it was like kind of like my birthday treat, right? And the bill came to like $105 for like 4 of us, right? Because we had, yeah, you know, which isn't that expensive for 4 people here in Australia. But that's what all she was going to pay, $105. So I chipped in $5. I said, I'll cover the tips, okay, $5. So $5 is kind of reasonable by Australian standards, okay? But she could have gotten away with not tipping at all. That's how it works over here. I tip only because I used to be a waitress back in, back at university over here. So I know it's just kind of like an acknowledgement of like, their service. But you don't have to. But yeah, if any of you guys ever come to Australia, you need a job. I'm always struggling with staff. I put the word out there like a few weeks ago that I needed staff for this event. Not one single person responded. Granted, I put it on a few Facebook pages, and the only kid who responded was that 18-year-old fresh out of high school kid, right? So that's why I got him on. But there's no such thing as a training wage either. I couldn't say, look, he's a new kid, never worked a day in his life. He's helped his mom, but he's never worked a proper job a day in his life. It would give me some incentive to hire him if I could pay him like whatever, a training wage. But no, there's no such thing. I have to pay him like the same rate as everyone else on the basis of his age alone. So you got to figure out like what system works and what doesn't. Yeah, still driving. I'm like that too, to be honest. I spend a fair bit on food, But yeah, I don't. Like you see, look at this shirt I'm wearing. Yeah, if you've been watching my broadcast, you notice I've been wearing these old beaten up shirts, like in every single one of them. I mean, first of all, like, it's a little bit of a, branding thing. Second of all, I've got 8 of these shirts left from my restaurant days, right? This is what my waiters used to wear on the floor in my restaurant, right? And so I've got a bunch of these left over. But yeah, I'm not that fussed about like getting like, paying. I don't have a single piece of jewelry on me, so if ever anyone thinks of robbing me, they're gonna be sorely disappointed. But yeah, I tend to live within a different frame of mind in terms of how I spend my money. So that's totally true. Yeah. Grab me a slice of pizza. Yeah, well, yes. It's nothing like pizza, but pizza is good. So this is just gonna take a couple more minutes to fry up. And I'll throw these all into the one sieve, right? And that's the oil that's gathered on the bottom. And most of it is going to be from the eggplant, right? And that's why I stick it in the sieve. I'm just gonna clear out a couple of things and then I'll come back. So they've all pretty much held together quite well, which is good. No rejects yet. So this is generally the color I like to get. Oh, you can't really tell. It's funny how the lighting really affects how it looks on camera, but this is a little bit more brown than the previous batch, and that's good, okay? So with these here, this is from about like just over half a kilo of fish paste, right? You see how much I generated. And you can actually just box these up and keep them in the fridge. You don't have to cook them up the way I'm going to cook them up now. You can actually just like, if you make yourself like a bowl of ramen or something like that, or any kind of like instant noodles, just pull them out of the fridge and toss a few pieces, and that just make your noodle dish or whatever it is you're eating a lot more interesting. So that's how I would use it. I'm just transferring the oil back out of it, and then I'm going to heat this up again. But in the meantime, I want to use some garlic. And this is the kind of garlic I use, guys. This is just, I don't know if you can get it over in your hardware world. This is just garlic cloves that's already been peeled, okay? Fresh peeled garlic cloves. So the great thing about it is it's fresh and also that it's already peeled. So I don't have to worry about peeling garlic. I hate peeling garlic because it sticks to your hand. So I buy these again at my local greengrocer in 1 kilo bags, and that's about $7 Australian for a 1 kilo bag. 1 kilo is about 2.25 pounds. And then usually I would like mince a bunch of it and keep it in the fridge, and I use the boxes of minced garlic for stir fries and whatever. And the rest of it I might use them whole or in curry paste and all that. Okay, so there's just some minced garlic in here. And I've just got a tiny sliver of oil in here. And the sauces I'm going to use, I've got oyster sauce over here. I hope everyone's familiar with oyster sauce, right? It's oyster sauce. And if you're, not that it matters in this particular instance, but you can get vegetarian versions of it as well. 2.2 chaps, yeah. That was much garlic from my smuggling days. How were you smuggling? Okay, so I'm gonna throw in some garlic here. And like I said, you know, when my mom used to cook this, she would cook the different types of stuffed vegetables separately. I'm gonna mix some of them together, okay? By mixing it together, it means some of the flavors get intermingled. So you might get some of the chili, the heat from the chili kind of like leach into the rest of the dish, okay? But it doesn't bother me so much, and my toddler can handle a little bit of chili as well. So garlic, oyster sauce, I'm gonna use a little bit of sugar. And also I will need the tapioca starch or cornstarch, whichever you choose, okay? The difference between tapioca starch and cornstarch is that the cornstarch tends to lose its starchiness after a while, especially when the food goes cold. Tapioca starch holds onto it a little bit better, but potato starch apparently holds onto it a lot better. So, okay, so if ever you so put the oyster sauce in. This is a little bit runny only because I'm down to the bottom of my bottle and I've added some water to it. Usually it'll be a little bit thicker than that, okay? So I'm going to throw in some of this. Not these ones. These are the fish cakes I wanted to show you. Okay. Now, this applies to a lot of like Chinese stir-fried dishes. So generally with Chinese stir-fries, garlic, oyster sauce, soya sauce is what they use. But because I've lived in Australia for 30 years and I've intermingled with a lot of the Vietnamese community who love their fish sauce, I actually nowadays prefer using fish sauce to soya sauce. Okay, so I'm going to give a drizzle of fish sauce into this. First time taking my shoes. Okay. You don't convert. Okay, I hear you. I need nothing. Fair enough. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm just kind of like basically just working the oyster sauce through this, and like I say, fish sauce or soya sauce. Okay, I prefer fish sauce, but more traditionally you would use soya sauce. A few drizzle in there. I'm going to add a pinch of sugar to this. You can leave it out. The oyster sauce actually has a little bit of sweetness to it. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes I put it in, sometimes I don't, right? And if you want, you can drizzle some Shaoxing rice wine in here as well. I don't bother with that. I'm just going to add a bit of water to this. And just braise it, bring it up to a simmer. And then you're going to finish it off with a bit of tapioca starch. Okay, but we'll bring it to a simmer first. And I just want to show you, these are the fish cakes that I just molded and fried up. Okay, they're a little bit, the shape's a little bit odd, but it doesn't matter. And then once they cool down, ideally you'll want them to cool down before you try and do the next step with them. But generally, with the fish cake, you can freeze them up like this or keep in the fridge. And then next time, again, you know, if you're having some noodle dish or you want to throw some of this into a stir fry, you cut it like into slices like this, okay? Okay. So you've got like these fish cake slices, which hopefully some of you will recognize in your noodle dishes, in your fried noodle dishes at Chinese restaurants or in your soupy noodle dishes, okay? So these are like fish cakes. I'm just going to toss them into that mixture. And then at this point, you just want to taste test this, make sure it's salty enough or whatever, the fat flavors are well balanced. Okay, it's not bad. I'm going to, because like I said, I'm addicted to this thing. I'm just going to add a little bit of my chicken powder into this, okay? And again, for those of you who joined me late, the chicken powder is kind of like chicken stock cubes, but in powder form, but nicer, you know. This particular brand has a bit of an MSG in it, but you can use ones that don't. And instead of water, if you've got stock, which I do actually, but I just thought for the heck of it, I don't want to put people off trying to. I don't want to put too many barriers to people attempting this dish, you know. But if you have stock, that will add an extra boost of like body to the dish as well. But you know, otherwise, just water is fine. So I just want. So to thicken it up, you just have a little bit of water in here. There's quite a lot of liquid in here, so you would need a bit more. So I'll put about a tablespoon of tapioca starch in here. I'm going to mix it up into a paste. I might need a little bit more water to this. Okay. So this is what they call in Chinese cooking, they call it a slurry. Okay. But it's basically a thickener. Pour it over your dish. I probably put a little bit more water in here than I would have liked. Okay, you can see that this is just thickening up. Okay. Okay, and if you want a little bit more color to this, you can add some soy sauce. Okay. So soy sauce, I tend to find like the transitioning from Malaysia to Australia, I found that the soy sauce brands that I've come across here in Australia are a little bit, the flavor is a little bit more intense. That's why I find that it changes the flavor of the dishes I'm cooking if I use too much of it. That's why I prefer to use fish sauce, okay? But it's a personal preference thing. Okay, so this is thickened up, and this is basically it. I'm just gonna dish this up. These days I want to know how they make the sauce. It's Malaysian soul food. Everyone here had mushrooms. These days I build homes. We all have to start somewhere. Oh, that's very cool. Okay, so this is it. Let me find a nice bowl for this. Hang on a sec. So this is kind of like comfort food to some extent, right? And you would have this with just plain boiled rice. And this is like I said, this is the Hakka version, which is the braised version of this stuffed vegetable dish. And I'll show you. I'll try and post some photos. I do have some photos. I just haven't posted them. So you can see this. Usually it's a little bit darker in color, so I don't know why it looks so pale. I think I just put too much water in the sauce. Okay, you see the picture of the other one that's a little bit darker. But yeah, so the gravy is on all that, so like you drizzle over your rice and you eat this. You know, that's one of them. Then you have some like Chinese greens or something. And one thing that people I think need to wrap their heads around as far as Malaysian cooking is that Malaysia, I always tell people, Malaysia is a country of immigrants. It sounds really cliche, but it's got 3 predominant like immigrant groups in the country, which are the 3 predominant ethnic groups in the country, because the Malays are technically the natives of the country, right? So you've got the Malays, the Chinese, and the Indians. So I come from a Chinese household, and it is a very Chinese dish, okay? If you talk to a Malay kid who, you know, they might not be familiar with this at all, okay? So depending on which kind of household you grow up in, the kind of food your mom would cook would vary, okay? So this is a very Chinese dish, whereas a rendang or chicken curry would be a more Malay dish and that sort of stuff. So depending on how you were raised, you might, you know, my mom sometimes might cook a chicken curry or might cook a rendang, but more normally she would cook this sort of stuff. The stir fries, the Chinese greens, the noodles and all that, right? Whereas the Malay family would have more of a curry rice dish kind of setup. So they're all different. So it's very, you wouldn't, for instance, see a at your dinner spread, you wouldn't see this next to some beef rendang or next to some chicken curry. This, you know, this is like kind of like Chinese night. You don't mix and match the different cultures. Okay, if you have some Chinese, if you have some chicken curry left over, then you might serve it alongside this. But traditionally, we keep our cuisines quite separate in that regard. Okay, if that makes sense, right? Okay. I don't think which place is very mild. So chili has a little heat. The purple thing gives a vegetable taste. Yeah, each of the package makes a different texture and side taste. That's very observant of you. There you go. Did you use low sodium? No. No, I don't do low anything. Okay, guys, I eat everything. Everything I do is kind of like, because I do street food, right? Street food in Malaysia, but it's kind of like fast food sort of thing. So my recipes are predicated on replicating the flavors of like the fast food of Malaysia, right? So I don't do low anything at all. I don't do low fat, low carb or anything like that. I just do how I remember this particular dish to taste growing up. Some people feel large okra. That's true. Yeah. I figure the fish place is very mild. I'm from Sweden. Chili is not a little heat for me. There are different types of chili. You know what? You can use capsicum instead of chili. Capsicum, what do you call it in America? You know, those big chili peppers, right? They have zero heat at all. Okay, so you can actually buy a big fat round capsicum and cut it into 6, right? And then spread it. And I have done that before as well. So capsicum will add a bit of color or replace the chili or have that kind of like chili flavor without the heat for this particular dish. The trick for spicy food is not let it touch the tip of your tongue. Is that right? I will try that. Yeah. Okay, so the fish paste is like a dense, super tasty meat. Yeah, you know, that's a good point. Dense, super tasty meat. We Asians like to stretch our meat, right? You know, like, because it's quite funny growing up as a kid in Malaysia. We had one day we had like a visitor from Australia come to our humble little, thanks for following, come from Australia, right, to join us for family dinner. And we had one fish on the table. And the way we Asians eat, right, we eat like a lot of rice and we'll like share everything else. So we had one fish to share. And the Aussie guy thought the whole fish was for him, okay? So I think Westerners their grocery bills would be a lot higher if you follow a Western diet, right? Whereas with Asians, we basically stretch everything. And this is an example of stretching as well. So the fish essentially, like, the fish fillets, if you look at the basa fish fillets, the back of the pack, how to prepare it, it'll tell you pan fry it, bake it, or saute it, right? Sort of thing. So you'd imagine that out of the 8 pieces or so, you get like, you know, or 6 pieces or whatever it is. You don't get a lot out of it. And the way we stretch it is by adding water, adding tapioca starch, adding all kinds of stuff, and then just using a smearing of it across like a whole bunch of vegetables, so you stretch your usage of the premium content in your diet, you know, so that it goes a lot further as well. That's why we use like cheap slices of like meat and all that as well, and also we use like thin slices in stir fries as opposed to giving you a big chunk of steak as well, right? I like my steak, but I'm just saying like from a you know, economy perspective, we stretch a lot of our stuff. Same with prawns and all that sort of stuff. You know, you can mince it up and then, you know, mix it in with other stuff. So whatever it is you end up with still has that prawn flavor, but you know, it's not just the one prawn itself that you're eating. So yeah, that's how we approach it. Just add salt after you cook it. Low sodium from the head. I just can taste salt much more than most. I would make a poor chef. I have no idea how much salt to add. Just that salt after you cook. Yeah, that's true. You can do that too. Never use cilantro as it tastes like dishwashing liquid. Someone added a bit of lemon too. Cilantro is, we call it something else over here. Cilantro, is it Chinese parsley or coriander? Is that the same thing, coriander? Right? I'm not a huge fan of huge amounts of fresh coriander myself either. But there you go, guys. I'm going to post the recipe on jackiem.com.au, so hop over there. In a day or two, it should be up, right? But I'm pretty sure I've posted a recipe before. It's not hard, right? It just goes to show how that's one way you can stretch fish and you know, just like blend it and add other stuff to it. And the paste, like I say, if you don't use it all up, throw it in the freezer for something else. But yeah, with the fish paste, you can make fish balls, you can make fish cake slices, like fish cake slices, you know, you slice it up and throw a few slices into your noodle dish or something like that, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And you can stuff it like I did. So these leftover ones here, I'll throw them into takeaway containers, and then I'll just go through them slowly. This one, I'll just eat with a bowl of rice. Okay, cool, right here. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. So if you've got any questions, hit me up, and I'll try and answer them in my next broadcast. I have someone from Russia ask me something, and I keep meaning to get to it. I totally forgot about it. I will get to it tomorrow. And good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you. Next broadcast is Wednesday, my time, which is Sydney, Australia time at 5:30 p.m. Which would be actually in the middle of the night in the USA. But anyway, I'll see you guys. Ciao.